Brandon, welcome to the show.
Frank, thanks for having me, man. I've been watching, so I'm excited to be here. I'm looking forward to this.
So Zoom is born in the cloud and still a lot of the contact center industry is sitting on-prem. It's kind of shocking to think that that's still an occurrence, but it makes sense because there's just been a ton of investment. It's hard to make that move. How does Zoom handle that conversation with customers? One, hey, we're new to the market, we're an upstart, we're changing the way things are done, we're a single pane of glass, all our technology is in-house. How do you also, because you have this cloud-based background, how do you get people to move off of on-prem?
Yeah, I think you have to be intentional about it. One thing is you need to be able to effectively communicate the story. What does the move look like?
Mhm.
Because people that have been on-prem, and I manage contact centers and premises-based equipment. I've been in the game a long time, and then cloud equipment, and the implementation, the installation, all this, it's a heavy painful experience in most cases. And sometimes that's what's in that leader's mind when they're thinking, oh, you want me to get new technology. They don't understand the cloud experience of starting up, and the premises experience is comparable. That's the first thing. I think the other thing is the onus is a little bit on the vendor to make that an easier experience. The way we've actually done that is we have taken the mindset that we're actually going to integrate and cooperate with the Mitel, with Avaya. These are announcements that we've made. So we will run our technology piece and parcel with Avaya. We'll run it with Mitel. So now you're taking the wean approach. That's our approach in some cases, because if someone's heavily using Avaya premises-based equipment across multiple locations, telling them that they're going to stop on the 30th of June and then start on the 1st of July, a new system, that just doesn't work.
Mhm.
So we believe in telling the story and executing, but we also understand the importance of integrating pieces of our software so you can have a hybrid environment for a while you transition from one to another. And we've actually seen that be very successful, and not just with the ones that I mentioned, but I think it works to allow the customer to function in a hybrid environment while they work towards the cloud.
Being available, I think, is possibly one of the best experiences that you can have in a contact center, aside from
Mhm.
all the other great features and functionality. What has Zoom done to harden the infrastructure, build in things like disaster recovery? How large can you scale? Mhm.
That is something that we did have to take a little different approach to than simply having the voice that existed in our meetings environment, because it didn't require many changes in the states because of the way we were already set up, but it did require some changes when you're talking international, when you're talking phone and contact center internationally, the data that's being stored. So more data centers, more pops, more regional locations, more backups, as you said, infrastructure, because now you're talking the volume of traffic that's going back and forth, even down to the security that's required. When you're doing a meeting, you have the option of recording the meeting or not recording the meeting, right? So it can simply be a live stream thing. When you're doing a call and you're moving data around and then you're storing things in CRMs and stuff like that. So we did have to bolster our infrastructure a bit. And it was, like I said in the beginning, that's almost like playing with toys when you're talking to developers and IT people, which is our company is mostly made up of IT folks and developers and background folks. So when we look at it and go, wow, you know what, that might not be the right setup for where we're going. That was the right setup for our legacy products. That might not be the right setup for CX. Our IT folks are going, yeah, that might not be the right setup. They're excited about it, and they look at the challenge and the ability to grow and expand and bolster. And I'm not one of those guys, but I've been privy to a couple of those meetings early on, and I see those guys talk about. I mean, the diagrams they look at. First of all, make my eyes cross, but for them, it makes perfect sense. And they look at the redundancy that's required and the avoiding latency by having more regional pops based on where volume's coming from and where you can get phone numbers versus where you have. They do all that stuff. And it was a fun exercise, a lot of which happened before I got here, but I got to come in on the tail end and see where they were going.
Mm. Brandon, data in the contact center is fundamentally equivalent to power. What, from a real-time data and historical data perspective, is happening inside of the Zoom platform to make it a leader in terms of data management and data insights?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the AI conversation a little bit. We have, I mean, even before the contact center, we have access with permission. Not every customer gives you permission, right? But the majority of the customers give permission to access to all of the meetings that are happening worldwide, all of those conversations. So imagine not just the ones that happen in a contact center space, right? Of course, we have access to that information with customer permission. But now think everyone that has used Zoom over the last 10 years, especially the boom of the pandemic, our AI companion having access to all of that data, every script, every word that was said in every meeting that we have access to, compiling that information and making it actionable. You can start to think that not only grandiose things like about products and industry, but even minute things like everybody that has calls in the Southeast tend to respond better to someone who sounds like this or who approaches it this way. Or you find things like soft skills matter more in the Southeast than they do in the Northeast. So it's the data, I think, because we've had access to it for so long in different arenas, not just the contact center arena. I think it's actually put us ahead because instead of like a lot of companies, we say to a customer, hey, we'll collect the data that you want to collect with permission from your customers for you to use. That's one position. But we're also saying, hey, as a Zoom customer, we also have this whole batch of data back here that we've collected outside of the contact center industry
Mhm.
about customers and people with permission that could help you leap ahead of your competitor because we're not just getting information from your specific customer or even from one industry for that matter. So I think the ability to collect and use data effectively is something that we're well ahead of.
A lot of clients like to manage their own data, so they want access to APIs. What kind of provision do you have for that inside the platform, and how do you take that integration seriously?
We take it seriously by realizing that while we have access to it and compile it, it's not ours. It's not our data. So we have APIs, of course, pushing, pulling. We integrate, of course, into all the known CRMs, and we're actively looking for more. And in this case, we did even do some of the what some people might consider some of the niche CRMs or maybe some of the systems that are specific to the healthcare industry.
Mhm.
Right. It was important for us to be able to provide access to the industries that we support as well. And again, that goes back to not just allowing the access with permission, but that meant additional security, additional protocols, because you want to be PCI compliant, you want to be HIPAA compliant, all those things. So it was something that we had to go into with our eyes wide open and knowing that those types of things didn't exist in the meeting space, but they were necessary for the CX space.
Mm. When we think about automation, that's a big term that's used. It's a broad term, but it's used a lot in the contact center world where we're trying to automate follow-up processes. It could be after action notes like we're talking about here. We're using AI, but there's just so many things that can be done from the standpoint of leveraging the data that we're getting and creating automation that comes from that. What is being engineered inside of the Zoom platform to support that need?
I think a couple of things, like you said, we have the normal things like resolution codes and stuff like that after the call. One of the ones that I think that is really good is the after call surveys. We know a lot of companies do them. Some companies require the agent to do something or the customer to do something. I like that you have the ability to have them preset, so it simply starts when the agent's call is over. The customer isn't required to do anything. But I think making the data we're getting from the surveys, most surveys will say they'll return something to you that said, hey, yesterday 80% of your customers scored you a 3 out of 5 on whatever, and you can go read some area if you want to get specific comments. What I think is cool about adding AI to the surveys is you don't have to go look for that. You can the system can tell you as a leader, hey, yeah, you got an 85 yesterday, or you got the majority of the people said 3, but there's a reoccurring thing that we found in the surveys that might mean there's an actual issue with this specific product. because people are scored. They score the agent well, they score the service well, but every 8 out of 10 calls that we got on this specific product mentioned a wheel or something like that. So it's proactively having the AI proactively scrub the data, I think, is providing insights that I'm not going to say they weren't available, but I do think in the old way of doing it, you had to go find them. You
Mhm.
had to go look for them. And I think that's the benefit of the way we're using it now is the AI will bring it to you proactively. And to your point, you can use that to then reach out to that customer, regardless of the type of call or email or text chat they had. You can reach out as an organization and say, hey, you know what, we've identified something. Or you take that data back to your product team and say, hey, we've been getting a lot of this. And in the contact center gets all that information. We've always gotten that information. There hasn't always been a good way of giving it back to leadership or back to the product team and using it to make a difference. Or if it was manual. Having that be done systemically is I think provides tremendous value to a contact center operation.
Where's Zoom winning? You're in the marketplace now, a couple of years in, you're landing engagements with clients, you're building relationships. Are there industries? Are there sub industries? Are there specific use cases where Zoom is coming out on top?
Yes, and some of them surprised me in the beginning. Some of them were helped by COVID, so I'll give credit, even though it sounds weird to give credit to a pandemic.
Right.
But I want
It's a
people to
catalyst.
exactly catalyst for it. Yes, because what we found is that during that time, people weren't able to go into their doctors like normal. So the healthcare became huge because people were more inclined to make an appointment or have a conversation when they can see their healthcare provider. So the video aspect took off. Honestly, it was way more important than even my ignorance coming into Zoom. But seeing the importance of video in healthcare has really been a driver for us. Seeing the importance of video in the legal industry of all places, because again, people are more likely to have a conversation with therapists, with attorneys, and things when they can see them. So that's an area that we've been winning in. Healthcare is a big space for us, um, as well as places that we call non-traditional. I'm not sure what the industry would say, but we've had a lot of success with help desks in smaller support teams and HR teams, marketing teams, people that if you probably went to their company and say, hey, do you have a contact center? They probably like, no, we don't have that. But they could benefit. And the way I say it is we have found a lot of success with people who might not consider themselves a contact center, but they're benefiting from contact center technology.
Mhm.
And that's been really good for us. And of course, it goes without saying that anyone that already has Zoom has been a slam dunk for us because they know the user adoption is going to be easy. They know the employees already know what the product is. They go into it every day. They're using it already. So when we're talking, hey, you're just adding a phone icon in that app or adding a headset icon in that app, our close ratio with existing Zoom customers is insane.
From the standpoint of delivering a solution, but you're going to buy a contact center technology and like it can take 3 months, 4 months of time of going through this iterative process of design and build and UAT and everything else, all the user acceptance testing.
Mhm.
For you, what have you invested into that process in terms of training materials, your support teams, making sure that once people have actually made that choice, that that choice is actually reinforced by
Yeah.
their experience once they go live?
Yeah. Shout out to our PSO team, our service team, because it was a pivot for them, right? I mean, you're talking a team that was originally designed to help people stand up meetings
Mhm.
and to understand how webinars go, right? So it required a shift in their thinking, a shift in their skill set, right? Which meant bringing in some people, including new leaders that were more aware, more skilled in the phone space, the contact center space, to understand those implementations. So it required that team to grow. And then, like you said, the materials. We had to make a whole library of things that didn't exist. I mean, written material, videos, and then we went so far as to make actual trainings. Like you can actually get a competency, you can get a certification in how to implement Zoom Contact Center. Because we had to go through the process of building that, it improved the skill set and the knowledge of everyone associated with implementing and running projects here at Zoom. but it also helped us understand we need to be sure our customer is not only confident in their purchase, but in the delivery and implementation and ongoing usage of it. We have set follow-ups with our customers because we do want to know it's not a sales follow-up. This is what we implemented. Are you using it to its full potential? Because remember, I take you back to our very first thing. One of our drivers is utilization. We don't want to have features out there. We don't want to sell things that customers aren't actually using.
Mhm. I think you can probably understand and speak to this better than me, but inside of the contact center industry, a QBR typically sounds like, hey, we've looked at your usage and what does your growth look like in the next? Could we be getting some more licenses? It's not, it's not real smart and it's not helpful. For Zoom, what are you doing to change that iterative processes with the client in terms of having a better conversation? What are you measuring from your side to understand that you're actually doing the right thing for the client?
I think it goes back to the data. And because we're all in on how the AI can assess data proactively.
Mhm.
So you're right. So now we're not going to our customer because I gave a scenario before about how a supervisor or a leader in the contact center could get information and how they could give that information to the product team. But suppose for whatever reason, whether it's busyness, whether it's ignorance, whether it's lack of resources, suppose the company themselves isn't utilizing that function or doesn't have
Mhm.
the bandwidth to be proactive, right?
It happens.
We have the ability to do that now. So now we're not just going and saying, "Hey, look how many calls you took last month." We have the ability of sharing the data, that same data that we're collecting from the AI on your calls and all of your interactions, and bring it to the forefront in those QBRs, in those periodic meetings. So for some customers, it'll be redundant. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, we saw that, and this is what we did." But for some, it will be like, "Oh wow, we missed that," and then we could take the further step without brand names. If I'm dealing with someone in the healthcare space or in the retail space or a space where we have a lot of big name customers, and I have a customer that has a known issue that was brought to us by AI scrubbing their interactions, we actually have the ability to talk through potential best practices with them. And of course, we're not the only ones to do that. There's a lot of benchmarking companies out there
Mhm.
that will share that data. But I think that's the extra step that we're going for our happiness, for our
Yeah.
customer happiness.
For everybody's happiness. Well, I believe in that you can have the intention of putting everybody in a position to win. That actually that should be the intention. Doesn't always work out that way. There's not necessarily like a perfect scale, but you can deliver better outcomes for everyone if you really try. And that sounds like that's something that you're working on. From from the standpoint of exciting developments in your platform, what do you see as interesting coming into the realm of contact centers that you see Zoom taking a role in?
Wow. I think for us the excitement comes from and right now it's AI, but I think what a lot of people don't realize is when you say AI, this already, Frank, but a lot of people don't know. You say AI, they think, oh, either robotics or something on the front end or chatbots or something on the back end. The reality is AI can be applied across the board to almost anything and everything in different aspects. If there's data available that can be farmed, if there's interactions that take place that you can learn from. So that's what's exciting to me. We actually are looking now holistically at our employee experience products like WorkVivo and Chat and the things we have on the back end, and our customer experience products like the contact center and the phone and the workforce management. And we're looking at how can we use AI to tie them together,
Hmm.
and not just for the sake of having technology that works together, but for the business, right? If the information that is available to a customer facing person is more quickly combined, sorted, pulled apart, made actionable, and given to a back office person or a leader, then that improves that business. So that's what we're looking at right now. That's where we're going. And the ideas from people way smarter than myself who sit around writing on whiteboards are phenomenal. And they're exciting, honestly, because I've seen how things go from white to launch here. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, actionable is a key word.
Mhm.
You're in an elevator, you're going up 60 floors. It's one of those 40 to 60 floors deals. So that 0 to 40 goes pretty fast. And you're talking to a potential prospect. What is your non-sales statement about why Zoom Contact Center versus the competition?
Honestly, my non-sales statement goes back to user adoption, either fortunately or unfortunately, because I'm an operator first. Like I have the role at Zoom now, but like you, I grew up in contact centers. I was an agent, supervisor, manager. So my approach is always as an operator first. So if I'm talking to someone, I share the biggest thing about a true omnichannel, like everything in one application, is the morale of the agent, having information accessible to them in an easy way, not having to teach them something because everybody knows how to use Zoom, um, gives them the tools they need to do their job well. And when they have the tools to do their job well, they deliver a better experience. So
Mhm,
my thing is all about, look, they're actually going to use this. It's not a pure riff. It's just easy,
mhm.
and I like easy.
You have a heart for the agent. I love that.
Yeah.
Brandon, thanks for being on the show.
I appreciate it, man. Thanks for doing what you do. I can tell you again, as an operator, I appreciate this type of work. And I just think back to myself when I was a manager and stuff, having and it's not like it's anyone else, but having true experts talk about real issues, not
Mm.
sales stuff, I think is what helped me become better as a manager and what made my operation better. It wasn't always the sales guy that came in to pitch me something. It was look, this is a real problem that happens in the contact center. This is what we can do about it. Those things made my career, quite frankly. So I appreciate the fact that you're still waving that flag, man.
Thank you. Well, I think that competency it's the new way. It's always been the same. It's always been the way to getting things done, but people are recognizing it and appreciating it more than ever. And to have competency, you have to toil in anonymity for a while other
Yeah,
people are out on the surfboard or being towed behind a boat or grinding on something. But that's how you got there. That's how I got there.
yeah,
Appreciate you.
yeah. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for having me.